Playbook for Performance, the official podcast of Shawna Corden, the Joan of Arc for corporate healing and performance. Join the quest to make work fun again by preparing leadership for engaging workplaces. And now, your host.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We're talking about performance management this week. This is the how to, what to, where to, and responding as a leader to the demands of your team performing. So it's really interesting how this all comes together, because a lot of people think about performance management as this nasty situation where you're overly holding people accountable, they get frustrated, you have to be the bad guy. But really, it's about setting expectations. And when you set expectations properly, everything gets easier. So I'm Shawna Corden. I'm a coach. I specialize in working with leaders and their teams to get their teams to perform just as well as they possibly can. And my job is to make it easy for you as a leader to have this Cliff Notes, version of leadership where you can execute on these daily habits that make your job so much easier. Now, it does require some discipline. It's sort of like eating your vegetables, but it makes your life so much easier. So let's get into it. So what is considered performing? A lot of times people confuse kind of a job description with a position plan. The job description is a general description of the role in this very timeless sense. It's not adjusted or tailored for the individual or the demands of the year. It's kind of like what you would post in a job opening that says, hey, we're looking for a team coach and they need to be able to hold people accountable and help us paint our vision and distribute the work and things like that. That would say, oh, this is a job for Shawna Corden. Versus if the job description talked about something entirely different, if they were talking about spelunking or something like that. So it gives you some direction there. The position plan is more specific. It gets tailored for the person and it's tailored for the year, because year after year, the demands in terms of the business plan change. We expect our individuals to grow in terms of their capabilities, and the capacity that they have may vary depending on previous projects that have not yet finished. They need to continue to go forward. So what it really should do in terms of the position plan and the performance expectations for the year, it should set expectations for the work that is to be done and how the work should be done. I've had many a project manager reporting to me in the past. Some of them are very gentle, they get work done, they make friends with everybody. I have others that are bulls in a china shop, and although they both get the work done, one of them has team members that are clamoring to work with them again and again, and the other one is like, yeah, I'll take a hard pass on that one because I was left bruised and bloodied after working with that individual. So that's what I mean about how the work should be done. By when? So what are the dates that things are due? It's really to ensure that you and your individual contributor or manager, depending on your level, are on the same page. And we've used this metaphor about paint the shed lots of times in the past. It comes from Brene Brown. If I ask you to paint the shed, I want you to tell me, as the recipient of that task, tell me what the painted shed looks like so that I know that we're on the same page. We also want to create an understanding of how their time will be spent on projects and programs and how it might be balanced throughout the year. I work with a lot of wealth planners, wealth management, and they have very busy seasons depending on their practice. It might be very busy at the end of the year for tax advantage purposes. It might be very busy right before submitting taxes. It could be very quiet in the summer when lots of people are taking holiday. It just depends. Other practices are different. And so can you shed some light for your individuals about how business will, wax and wane throughout the calendar year? It also, I always like to use a kind of a pie chart that says, 30% of your job is going to be doing this particular kind of work. Might be kind of, I call it housekeeping, but it's email, response to email, things like that, meetings, all of these things that have nothing to do with your individual projects. They are simply just part of the job. It's kind of the care and feeding of the role. Another 20% is going to be on this big breakthrough project that we have, and it's going to take a lot of focus, but it's only going to be quarters 2 and 3. You can expect this other wedge to be on and on and on. So it might not be exact, but it helps them plan. It helps them forecast for their own vacation time. It helps them kind of negotiate duties with a partner if they have one and they have children. It's like, hey, I'm going to be heavy on business travel during this time. I'm not going to be so available to do these things. Those things can really help quite a bit. It also defines some development opportunities in terms of I'm growing in my career. These are some things I would really like to learn. Can I be a fly on the wall for this project that's coming up here? Or, we have a brand new member of the team and they're going to need a buddy, to help them along the first 3-6 months that they can go to get help. That's going to take, 4 hours a week. And I want that to be part of your role. I want to allocate that. I want to set the expectation. So mentoring can also be a development opportunity as well. In terms of communicating it, I always like to use the job description as just a general framework where we said, hey, you're going to be coaching a team. These are some of the duties and obligations that come with being a coach of a team. It's attending team meetings, working on communication styles, researching mini trainings that people can do based on gaps of the performance, things like that. So kind of going through that and really outlining what the individual is expected to deliver. For example, I'll pick on my wonderful assistant, Michelle. Producing 1 podcast per week with what kind of measures? We have a goal of, 30,000 listeners a week. We want it edited tightly, but we don't want to exceed more than 5 hours of editing. We want to address any comments in the comment field. We want to secure that thumbs up. It might take some research to figure out what it would take to do that. We want to write it in SMART goals. So when we say SMART goals, we're saying specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely. So 1 podcast a week is very specific. The week is the timely piece. It's realistic for her to be able to do it. It's attainable. So all of those things in there. Now, some of these other stats that could be wildly unrealistic. So it's important that the individual come back to you and say, hey, we are a long way from 30,000 listeners a week. Here's my recommendations of things we need to do to get us to that number. Okay. Or, hey, I found this great software that helps me edit the podcasts. And here's how much it costs, and this is how much time it's going to save. Great. Have the individual submit those recommendations to you. That's part of their performance. It's not just to be the soldier that goes and executes exactly without question. Depending on these knowledge workers, we really want them to come back and make suggestions, look for opportunities for improvement, go out of their way to make it even better. Now, if you're from the world of project management, you know that we have a tenet of project management that says no gold plating, right? Which is kind of going above and beyond and over delivering because our clients aren't paying for that piece. And so we want to go back and really make sure that we're just delivering the bare, as conscripted. But in general, I think for most performance, we do want individuals to look at how they can go above and beyond. And that might be worth a discussion with your individual contributors or your managers to say, yes, I would love you to go above and beyond here. This space, not so much. Either this client we already know is not going to renew with us, and so we're not trying to sweeten the deal for them, so on and so on. There could be lots of reasons. So development plans are opportunities to grow their strengths. For those of you who've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that this is a big soapbox issue for me. I hate it, and hate is not too strong of a word, when leaders have development plans solely focused on challenges or weaknesses of an individual. It ignores their strengths atrophy, and it makes the workforce homogenous. So every employee can be an all-star, but the leader needs to recognize the strengths and put together a program that helps enhance those strengths. So if they're a great three-point shooter, keep them working on that and find even more techniques to make their three-point percentage even higher. Okay. The only exception would be if a weakness is threatening performance. So I have had executives in the past who are super smart, good communicators, terrible presenters. They get into the weeds, too much data, backstory, yada, yada. It's like, no, let's get some coaching on this. Let's practice this. And a lot of times it's really because it wasn't a focus. They didn't pay attention to that day in class, and it can be very easily remedied. But if your individual has a weakness that really threatens their performance or their reputation in the workplace, credibility wise, or perhaps they've gotten a bad label, I would address that because it will inhibit their growth in their career. And then the last piece about what we want to communicate is any personal aspirations that can be accommodated. Now, I've coached thousands of leaders, and I can tell you that people's aspirations are often very low. As a coach, I don't have any of those limiting beliefs that they're carrying around. And they will say, well, I'd like to be a supervisor in, a couple of years. I'm like, what? By that time you could be a director. So if they have those ambitions, be sure to challenge them in a healthy way, and note your belief in them. Note that they either have all the raw attributes, or they are so close in terms of skill development, or if they seem to be missing something in the formula, that there's an opportunity to plug that piece of the formula in there. That would be the last thing in terms of what we want them to deliver over the year. So it's really important that you keep tabs on the progress and do not hurt yourself by saving this till the end of the year and then trying to remember, like, gee, how did they do this year? People do it all the time. Make sure you don't do that. And what I mean by that is, in each one-on-one, just even if it's only a post-it note, make some notes in terms of their individual progress towards the goal, a highlight of how you saw them perform in the last couple of weeks, something unique about them. Often it could be a thing that makes the team better. so-and-so introduced a tool this week that's going to save everybody 5 minutes a day in managing their email. Hey, that adds up. Put all those notes in one folder. So have a folder for each individual on your team, whether it's digital, whether it's paper. Just remember, anything digital or anything collective, and I advise this to coaches, you don't want anything discoverable when it comes to confidentiality. So make sure that when you're done coaching a client like that, you're shredding those notes. And I never keep my client notes in a collective like notebook where I keep team meetings, because those notebooks are discoverable. So I would say, keep that in mind as you're keeping notes. Quarterly, touch base on the progress of their goals, any new emerging goals that you've added, because as a manager, your job is to catch the work and distribute it. And we all know that at the beginning of the fiscal year, when you inherited the business plan, is not how you ended the year. Projects hopefully will be canceled. New projects will be added. You'll have emerging priorities and so on. So keep all that in mind. Do give them feedback on how they are prioritizing their goals. Is it appropriate? Are they working on their favorites, their pet projects, and ignoring the things that others have dependencies on, or maybe are more important to the organization? Give them some feedback on that. In terms of numbers, are they meeting expectations? Do we need to make some adjustments? Do we need to change our strategy in order to make the numbers? Which of those has priority, the existing strategy or the numbers? So you'll have to play that game as leader. Do notice how they're growing. Verbalize your observations. It could be that they're having more mature thoughts, that they're contributing in team discussions, or they're thinking outside their box and they're acting more as your general counsel, as they should. Do note how they're fitting in the team. Observe if they have really been supporting particular individuals that are weaker in some areas, or if they've been appropriately humble around others who have great strengths. All of those things are really important to make note and give them feedback on. So what do you do if they're failing or falling behind? Number one, I would say assume positive intent. No one plans to fail. The worst it could possibly be would be sabotage. And I've never seen that. Never. So do assume positive intent. My go-to question is to ask, is everything okay at home? There was one time in my career with my team of project managers that every single person on my team had cancer in or around their family. So an immediate family member or an extended family member that was affecting them. And I said, oh my gosh, all of you are trying to be tough and carry this thing on your own. You guys are all project managers. Let's get together and have a best practices session. And so we devoted a whole 2 hours of hey, this is how we manage work and home. These are the things that have worked for me. This is, it was fabulous. And, but, they were all sort of, I don't want to say hiding it, but they were trying to be professional and not share it and then it was such a relief when everybody got it out on the table. So it's always good to ask, without judgment but true concern about them as a person, is everything okay at home? And then the question is, how can you help? Do you need to provide air cover? Do you need to do some introductions? Do you need to grant them some permissions? Do they need tools or training? Do they need mentoring or coaching? Are they just simply overloaded in terms of capacity, or do they not have the capability? Two different things here, right? Sometimes people are overloaded and we need to take something off their plate, or we need to stop doing something. We might need to add more staffing. We might need to transfer a project to another department. And sometimes it's slow going because they're learning something new, and it takes them twice as long as a veteran to do it. And so think about what you can do to help improve their capability, whether it's tools, training, assistance, whatever it might be. And then finally, clarity. Clarity just goes so far. I know we've talked about this on the podcast a million times about connecting the dots from the business plan to what they do individually, on a regular basis. But it just makes so much of a difference for people to know, hey, I'm delivering as expected. So anything you can do to help, by all means, make those efforts. So some homework for you. If you haven't gone down this road of performance management, here's some tips we really recommend. Number one, SMART goals. That really goes the distance in terms of making sure that the expectations are clear. There's a number, there's a date, it's, how broad it is, what's the intent. Don't forget to include in those SMART goals, here's the current situation that is driving us to this particular strategy. Here is the strategy, and here's the ultimate goal of this effort. I can't tell you how many times as a business planner, we had all of that set up, and they delivered something that was off the mark because they got away from the goal. They got kind of lazy with what it was. So, don't forget that just a few degrees off the mark, you'll end up at a completely different destination. Do have a regular check-in schedule. I'm a big fan of every other week, even if it's just for 5 minutes. Don't miss those meetings. Make sure that you don't go a month or, God forbid, even 2 months before you check in. People need feedback. They need support. They want to know that they're on track. So be sure and give them that. Do develop a plan. If you're new to development planning, I recommend a 3-prong approach. Find someone who does the thing well that you can shadow. It might be from afar. You might be watching a video or a documentary or something like that. Read a book or articles about this topic, and then get some practice. An on-the-job kind of project that helps them practice that, hopefully with a veteran that can kind of oversee what they're doing and give them feedback as they go. So that would be my suggestion in terms of developing a development plan for them. Do recognize achievements, even those who are not wired for words of affirmation want to know that they're on track. So be sure to have some specific feedback for them. Good job is not enough. It's, hey, you're doing a good job by doing X, Y, Z. The podcasts are engaging, the video is interesting, the lighting is good, whatever it might be. Do address underperformance as quickly as you observe it. It's uncomfortable, but again, it's an opportunity to create clarity. And as my physical therapist says, it's just another opportunity to excel. So look for an opportunity to catch it, be gentle about it, have some structure to address it and correct it quickly. You don't want it to get out of control. And then finally, and I would suggest assigning this to your team, look at some technology that you can use to implement performance management. Anything that helps streamline the performance review process. And it could be that you want your team members to write their version of how they're performing, and that you get to validate it and say, yeah, I think I agree with that, or I think you're overestimating your little self a little bit, and here's why. All of those things I think are great things to do. So that's some tips for you homework-wise in terms of what you can do. Next time we're going to be talking about diversity and inclusion. I happen to believe that Diversity of thought is one of the most important things that not only enrich us, but also make the best business sense. So we're going to get into that a lot next week. Don't forget, if you're struggling with your team or if you're struggling with your leadership, you would like to be more confident in how you lead the team, you want to know how others are doing it, things like that. We offer leadership coaching, we do team coaching, we do workshops, everything from DISC communication styles to, you name it. Give us a call and we can talk about your needs and how we can help you. So you can reach us at the podcast at shawna@shawnacorden.com or Shawna@shawnacorden.com. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to Playbook for Performance. To learn more about Shawna Corden, her consulting programs and tools, please visit her website at shawnacorden.com and follow us on social media at Shawna Corden.